My sister balked at meeting my new boyfriend, acting distant and strange. Then I discovered she'd been madly in love with him throughout high school. I'm a 23-year-old college student, and for the past 4 months, I've been head over heels for my 28-year-old boyfriend. He's everything I've ever wanted in a partner. Thoughtful, brilliant, and so kind, it almost feels unreal. After a string of disappointing relationships with guys who couldn't be bothered to text back or got annoyed when I asked about their day, he's a breath of fresh air. He listens, remembers the little things I mention, and makes me feel valued in a way I hadn't realized I was missing. We met at the start of this semester at our university, where he's a graduate student. I was struggling in a notoriously tough course, known for tanking GPAs, and my academic advisor suggested I join a tutoring group. I'm not one to ask for help, so I hesitated, but with my grades on the line, I signed up. The first tutoring session was a mix of awkward silences and disinterested students, but he had a knack for making it tolerable. He explained complex concepts with patience and cracked subtle jokes that lightened the mood. I found myself looking forward to the sessions, not just for the academic boost, but because of him. We started chatting during breaks, discovering we had a lot in common: our love for niche indie bands, a shared appreciation for sarcastic humor, and, surprisingly, the same hometown, a small city 3 hours from campus. Even crazier, we realized we'd gone to the same high school. Though he graduated the year before I started as a freshman, he was in the same grade as my older sister, who's 26. When I asked if he knew her, he said they'd hung out in the same social circles but hadn't kept in touch since graduation. It seemed like a fun coincidence, and I didn't think much of it. After a few weeks of tutoring, he asked me out for coffee. I was nervous, but excited. He was easy to talk to, and our chemistry was undeniable. Coffee turned into dinner because neither of us wanted the conversation to end. We talked about everything: our favorite books, embarrassing childhood stories, and dreams for the future. I ended up acing the class thanks to his tutoring and, honestly, my determination to impress him. Over the next 4 months, our relationship deepened. He introduced me to his roommates and a few friends from his grad program, and I brought him to meet my roommate. We went on double dates with her and her boyfriend, laughing over board games and cheap wine. It felt effortless, like we were building something real. Lately, we'd been talking about taking things to the next level, spending the holidays together. My family has a big Christmas Eve tradition: a fancy dinner with all the trimmings, followed by opening one gift each. Christmas Day is more laid back, with a huge brunch and the rest of the presents. I pictured him at our table, charming my parents with his quiet humor and fitting right in. But I hadn't told my family about him yet. My last relationship was a disaster. My ex was unreliable, and when we broke up, my family was almost as heartbroken as I was. My mom still brings him up sometimes, which is exasperating, so I wanted to be sure this was serious before introducing him. When I finally called my mom to share the news, she was over the moon. She peppered me with questions. What's he studying? He's a grad student with a 4.0. What's his family like? 2 parents, still married, and a younger brother. Does he treat you well? Better than anyone I've ever dated. She was thrilled at the idea of him joining us for Christmas Eve. My dad was more reserved, as usual, but said he sounded like a fine young man and looked forward to meeting him. They both gave their blessing for him to come. Feeling optimistic, I called my sister to tell her. She's 3 years older, and we've always been close, despite bickering as kids. By high school, we were confiding in each other, and now we get along great. She's usually cool about my boyfriends, even the less than stellar ones, so I expected her to be excited. I even teased that it'd be like a mini high school reunion since they'd known each other back then, but when I mentioned his name, her tone shifted. She went from enthusiastic to icy, saying she wasn't comfortable with a stranger at our family's Christmas. I was floored. My sister's outgoing, loves meeting new people, and has never cared about strangers at family events. She's even bringing her boyfriend of 7 months this year, someone I've only met twice. Confused, I asked if she'd had an issue with him in high school. She brushed it off, claiming she barely remembered him, which only made her reaction stranger. I suggested they could meet beforehand to make her more comfortable, but she got defensive, told me to drop it, and hung up. Later, she texted, accusing me of being pushy for trying to force her to meet someone she didn't want to. This was completely unlike her. She'd been fine with my exes, even the ones who didn't deserve it. I tried calling her back, but she didn't answer. I sent a text apologizing for pushing, but asking for an explanation. She read it, but didn't reply. Days passed with no response, just vague texts like, "I don't want to talk about it," or "Please stop." I was at a loss. My mom was just as baffled and tried calling her, but my sister kept dodging with excuses about being busy. I didn't want to ruin Christmas for everyone, so I reluctantly told my boyfriend my sister wasn't okay with him coming. I couldn't even explain why, which made it worse. He was incredibly understanding, but I could tell he was hurt. He wondered if he'd unknowingly done something to upset her in high school, but all he recalled was being friendly acquaintances. He suggested spending Christmas Eve with his family and meeting up with me later, which was sweet, but didn't address the real issue. My sister's bizarre behavior was creating tension in my relationship. I was torn. I really like this guy, maybe even love him, and I can see a future with him. But my sister's important to me, and her refusal to even meet him felt like a betrayal. Was she hiding something? Did they have a history she wasn't telling me about? My mom suspected there might be some high school drama she was keeping private. The uncertainty was driving me crazy, and I hated that my boyfriend kept asking if he'd done something wrong when I had no answers. Some online comments suggested my sister might have had a crush on him, which hadn't occurred to me. I asked my boyfriend if there was ever anything between them. He was adamant that they were just casual friends, only hanging out in group settings. He'd been in a committed relationship throughout high school with a girl from their friend group, so he hadn't even considered anyone else. He even pulled out his old yearbook to jog his memory, but nothing stood out. He seemed genuinely confused, insisting they'd never had any conflict. When I got home for the holidays, my sister acted like everything was normal, helping me unload my car and chatting about mundane things. It was infuriating. She was avoiding the elephant in the room. My mom, sensing the tension, suggested we go to dinner alone to talk. We picked a Mexican restaurant we used to love in high school, and at first, it was fine. We laughed about her job, my classes, and our parents' quirks, but I noticed she steered clear of anything related to my life at school, like she was dodging any mention of my boyfriend. Finally, I brought it up. Her demeanor changed instantly. She got upset and told me to leave it alone. I explained that I have serious feelings for him and needed to know if she had a legitimate reason to dislike him, like if he'd hurt her somehow. She insisted he'd never done anything to her, just repeated that she didn't want a stranger at Christmas. It felt like a lie. Frustrated, I pointed out that her boyfriend's practically a stranger to me. I've only met him twice, yet I'm fine with him coming. She claimed it was different because I'd already met him, but I reminded her she'd technically met my boyfriend in high school and refused my offer for them to reconnect before the holidays. I even asked if she was jealous that I was dating someone from her grade, which she denied vehemently. The conversation went nowhere, and we drove home in silence, both fuming. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom, I couldn't stop replaying it. Then I remembered my sister's high school best friend, who still lived in town. They'd been inseparable back then, and if anyone knew what was going on, it'd be her. I messaged her on Instagram, keeping it casual. Hey, random question. Did you know boyfriend's name in high school? I'm dating him now and just found out he went to school with you guys. She replied quickly, asking if my sister knew I was dating him. That raised a red flag. When I said yes and that she wasn't thrilled, she asked to call me. What she told me blew my mind. My sister had been obsessed with my boyfriend from 7th grade through high school. It wasn't just a crush. She was in love with him, writing his name in her notebooks, planning their hypothetical wedding, and even applying to the same colleges he was considering. She tried everything to get his attention, showing up at his job at the movie theater, going to parties he'd be at, hooking up with his best friend to make him jealous, and even spreading rumors that his girlfriend cheated to break them up. It backfired spectacularly, leading to a dramatic confrontation in the cafeteria. When he and his girlfriend broke up senior year, my sister thought it was her chance, but he never showed interest. Devastated, she chose a different college to start fresh. Shockingly, she'd mentioned him over the years, still holding a small torch. I was stunned. My sister had dated other guys in high school and seemed happy with them. I had no clue she was pining for someone else. I felt sympathy for her unrequited feelings, but was angry she'd let a teenage crush disrupt our family holiday. Her friend made me promise not to tell my sister she'd spilled the beans, but I knew I had to confront her. Meanwhile, my mom had a heart-to-heart with my sister while they were Christmas shopping. Over lunch at the mall, my mom brought up my boyfriend, and when my sister got tense, my mom pressed her. Embarrassed, my sister admitted she felt awkward because she'd been so infatuated with him and he'd never noticed her, but now he was dating her younger sister. It wasn't about still liking him, she was happy with her current boyfriend, but about the humiliation of facing someone she'd made a fool of herself over. She was terrified he'd find out how intense her feelings had been. My mom validated her feelings but said she couldn't dictate who I'd date based on a high school crush. She urged her to talk to me. I decided to tell my boyfriend everything, nervous it might overwhelm him. We were hanging out at his place, sipping coffee, when I spilled the story. I tried to be tactful, framing it as my sister having a big crush that made her uncomfortable now. He was surprised, then thoughtful, saying he'd noticed her acting odd a few times in high school but never pieced it together. He apologized for any role he'd played, which I assured him wasn't his fault. He hadn't even known. When I jokingly asked if he'd dump me over my family's drama, he laughed and called me nuts, saying he's crazy about me and his family has their own quirks. We scrolled through my Reddit posts about the situation, chuckling at some of the wilder theories: secret affairs, bullying. Y'all are creative. He reminded me to take online advice with a grain of salt. A few days later, my sister called, asking to come over to my parents' house to talk. She looked sheepish when she arrived, immediately apologizing for shutting me down about my boyfriend. She admitted she'd been caught off guard by his name and reacted poorly. Hesitantly, she opened up, echoing what she'd told my mom. She was mortified about her teenage obsession and the embarrassing things she'd done to get his attention. She'd moved on in college and was genuinely happy with her boyfriend, who'd encouraged her to resolve this. Her biggest fear was that he'd known about her crush and would think she'd orchestrated our relationship somehow. I reassured her he had no idea she'd liked him and wouldn't judge her now. I promised not to share the specific stunts she'd pulled, and I've kept that promise. She said she'd work on getting past her discomfort and was okay with him coming to Christmas. Christmas Eve was better than I'd hoped. My sister was visibly nervous when my boyfriend arrived, giving him an awkward hello, but he was his usual charming self, chatting with my parents about everything from grad school to history documentaries. He and my dad bonded over some niche WWC film. He treated my sister with warmth, acting like they were meeting for the first time. We played board games as a family, and by dessert, my sister had relaxed, even discussing a TV show they both liked. My parents adored him, especially my dad, who kept saying he was a keeper. Later, my boyfriend told me he hadn't felt uncomfortable at all and thought my sister was nice. After she and her boyfriend left, she texted me, apologizing again and saying we made a cute couple. She admitted she'd been ridiculous and could see how happy we were together. I told her I forgave her and loved her no matter what. We're now planning a double date with my sister, her boyfriend, my boyfriend, and me to keep things friendly. My boyfriend and I are stronger than ever, even discussing moving in together when our leases end in a few months. I haven't told my family yet. After this drama, I'm taking things one step at a time. Thanks to everyone online who offered advice and support. Some of you were spot on about the crush, and while a few comments were harsh, most were genuinely helpful. I'm relieved it wasn't something darker, just a case of teenage heartbreak lingering too long. Here's to hoping the holidays next year are less eventful.